So, hello, it's the 8th of December 2011. This is Truth You Can Wake Up To, and I'm your host, Samuel William. So, today is possibly the last day of British sovereignty. Of course, all the European leaders are disappearing off to somewhere where the European Commission are basically going to grab the last piece of sovereignty of the European nations. Now, you can't really have been anywhere just recently without hearing about what's going on, what they're calling the sovereign debt crisis. Of course, when they say sovereign debt crisis, what they're really saying is the sovereign crisis. It's the ability of all of the countries in the European Union to actually make their own decisions in terms of financial policy, which of course is the original ruse for many decades. None of these countries actually had any ability to really decide what they do with their money. Of course, here in Britain, ever since Nathan Rothschild set foot on this island, we haven't really had any option as to how much money is in circulation, how much money we're borrowing, even really who we take as our enemies, who we decide to have wars against, and whether or not we win those wars is all dependent upon the Rothschild family, who many years ago decided to send the 5 arrows, as they were called, the 5 Rothschild sons, to the different European capital cities: London, Paris, Berlin, etc. Of course, you can read all about the Rothschilds. It's not really hidden. In fact, they're proud of their history, and why wouldn't they? They very quickly started controlling kings. Of course, here in Britain, most people know the story of what happened at the Battle of Waterloo, which was 1815. It was the culmination of the Napoleonic Wars, where, of course, here the first Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, the Iron Duke, managed to defeat Napoleon on land. Of course, Nelson had a go at defeating him in 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar. Although he won that battle, he didn't actually defeat Napoleon. No, Napoleon was defeated in 1815, except the Rothschilds at the time had the most developed information network, intelligence network, if you like, available anywhere. It was actually pigeons that they used to send across the as we call it, the English Channel and into mainland Europe, and it used to deliver information very quickly indeed. Well, of course, they got word that Napoleon had been defeated a full day before anybody on mainland Britain knew about it, and they started to sell off their stocks, and they started to sort of spread a little bit of panic in the stock market, and having the idea that Napoleon had won and we were soon to be invaded, everyone in the City of London started to sell off their stocks. The stock market plunged, and they were able to buy up huge investments for literally pence on the pound. And of course, within 24 hours, the real news came that the Duke of Wellington had actually defeated Napoleon. And of course, the stock market rebounded. Everybody started getting back into it, but the Rothschilds had then seized a controlling proportion of of British investments. Now, if you go into the City of London itself, and for those of you that don't know London very well, London's made up of 2 separate cities. The City of Westminster is in the west. That's where you'll find Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament. But over there in the east, you have a small little area we call the Square Mile, which is the City of London. Been there for a much longer time than the City of Westminster, but the City of London is kind of unique, especially in this country. It's a sovereign city-state, the City of London. The Queen is not in charge of it. No, they have their own figurehead. He's called the Lord Mayor of London. Not to be confused with the Mayor of London, that's Boris Johnson. A little bit like Homer Simpson with hair, that guy. For anyone who's seen him, he's very eccentric, and he's one of David Cameron's best buddies, so I think I've said enough on that. Well, the Lord, he's the mayor of Greater London, is Boris Johnson. He's not in control of the City of London. They are a separate sovereign city-state, and they started off around about 1698. They started to get a little bit disgruntled with having to be controlled by the sovereign of the nation, the king of the day. Decided they wanted to be independent. Actually finished off that process around about 1770 and became a country within a country. A little bit like Vatican City. The City of London, of course, is where all our big banks are, and we don't have too many large, tall buildings in the City of London, but there are a few of them, and just about every one you see will be an international bank, and you have more international banks in that 1 square mile than on any other square mile anywhere in the world, for a very, very simple reason, because they create their own laws. One of the laws is that corporations do not have to pay tax, so it's very, very nice for them there. But anyway, right in the city, you have the right in the centre, you've got the Bank of England, which is very much like a castle, and it's it was founded in 1694, and it's a sort of alright building. It's rather large, and that is, of course, the powerhouse. That's what most people think of as a government agency. But how can it be a government agency if it's in a different country? Well, of course, it can't. It's a corporation. It's a privately owned corporation. They have the power and the ability to lend funds to our government. So that's nice, isn't it? Just call them up over at Westminster. Do you want to borrow some money? Well, why don't you come over here and talk to us about it? I'm sure we'll be nice enough to think about lending you some money. So I'm just trying to illustrate here the point that we never really had the ability to control our finances, because opposite the Bank of England you've got Mansion House. Now, Mansion House, I always think of it as the sort of Buckingham Palace of the City of London. That's where the Lord Mayor of London lives. He was very much like the king of that town, if you like, merely just a figurehead, somebody who they can sort of point at and get rid of if there's a scandal or something like that. Not that there very, very rarely is there a scandal in the City of London. Do you know why? Because none of their business ever really gets shown in the press. Surprise, surprise. But you've got the Buckingham Palace of the city, the where the Lord Mayor of London lives. Is a quite grand-looking building. It's a little bit dirty, but it's a very dirty area. Bank Station just above that, if you know London. And you've got the City of London. And what is that sort of behind, towering above, sort of in the back garden of the leader's house? What is that big grey building? It's we call it a high-rise. It's not really that high, but it does tower above just an ordinary-sized dwelling. And it's got a big cube at the top. Big sort of grey silvery building. It's got a cube kind of suspended at the top that's separate from the rest of it. So it looks like it's got a very sort of hierarchical management system or something. You know, to be in the cube is to have your own security. You know, you're not really mixing with the those that sort of work below, do the administrative jobs. No, the things that go up in that cube are very, very private, very, very important. And this building is just situated in the back garden of the leader's house. Now, what is that building? Well, what do you know? It's N.M. Rothschild Bank. And they've been on that site ever since they came to London. This is their brand spanking new building. In fact, they're just putting a few sort of finishing touches to it at the moment, putting in some nice trees and decking it out with nice furniture upstairs. So next time you're in London, or maybe if you've got a very sophisticated version of Google Earth, maybe it will show it on there. I haven't actually looked. Maybe they were clever enough to make sure that that building doesn't appear on Google Earth, and certainly they wouldn't label it. But it'd be interesting to find out if it's there. Then maybe we can have a look at it that way. But for those people that know London, it's that building that no one ever talks about. So it's the last day of British sovereignty. Apparently, the leaders are going to Europe, and they're going to talk about how they've all been very, very bad. They've all borrowed way too much money, way beyond their means, and they've been unable to pay it back. And so the European Union is basically going to, or the European Commission, I should say, is going to rap them on the wrists and say, well, it's okay, guys. We're willing to carry on supporting you as long as we can now take the legal powers to control your finances. They can. What they're trying to achieve, and you can see this in the news, is they are trying to be able to install austerity measures upon countries without their say. So if they borrow too much, or they don't manage to pay it back, or there's a blip in the stock market which is their fault because their leaders aren't really sort of towing the line, then they can basically give you sanctions. Now, there's a problem with this, isn't there? Because as if we've got lots of demonstrations, protestations, if I could use that word, about the stock markets in London here, of course, under St Paul's Cathedral. They've been there for, I suppose, getting on for 3 months now. You've got the Occupy London people with their little tents, and they are camped underneath St Paul's Cathedral, because behind St Paul's Cathedral, through what's called the Temple Bar Gate, this big architectural gate, and if you go, is the London Stock Exchange, I should say. If you go to St Paul's, over to your left, you'll see this big gate. Lots of policemen standing in it because they don't want the tents to go through there. Of course, they've the protesters have been officially evicted. Of course, they're not really going anywhere. They're going to take it to the High Court, which would be really, really interesting. Not sure if you're allowed to go into the High Court and just watch a case, but that would be an interesting case to watch, because essentially, if we had a sort of lawful legal system, there would be two parties, one arguing one point, one arguing the other, and there should be kind of like both sides should be able to communicate their views. But of course, who's going to be there in that case? Well, none of the people who are there are going to be in that case, because they're not. They don't have a leader. They're a sort of a democratic collective. They all have equal say. You're not going to sort of bundle them all in there, and even if they were invited or summoned to the court, they are not going to be attending. It's the court case is going to be at the Royal Courts of Justice. that last J word is in inverted commas. But of course, this is because they're there because of the austerity measures, and just the fact that funds aren't available. What happened to the funds? Well, we know what happened to the funds. It got absorbed by the big banks because of their derivative scam, and now we've all got to pay it off, and that's why they're there. And because we have, so-called democracy in this country, that means that people can sort of demonstrate. It has an effect upon Parliament, and therefore they might change their decisions when they have the debate about it, especially on a local level. If you can really, really talk to your local MP and have a relationship with them, then maybe they might actually represent your views when they have a debate in the House of Commons. And of course, here in the UK, we can watch all of our sort of House of Commons is broadcast live every single day. There's a special channel run by the BBC, British, or should I say now the Brussels bullshitting corporation. But we're allowed to see that sort of game that goes on in the Houses of Parliament, and we can sort of, if you do what I do, I record their voices and then mix the words up so that they say things that are actually more true. In fact, I have one of them here. Do you want to hear it?
we have a plan to bankrupt the services that families rely on. This will affect many people. We're making sure this spreading agenda will be truly shocking to schools and social care.
So there you go. That was David Cameron, and I think what he was, the ideas he was putting forward there, coming straight from the heart. So I like to think. See, they do say these things. That was all from one little speech that he made, and the words were in there. He just, when he actually made the speech, he put them in the wrong order. So I just sort of reorganised the words for him. And keep listening if you want to hear more sort of little gems of what our politicians are really saying. I was actually looking for one. I was looking forward to. I wanted the speech of Tony Blair when just after the sort of September 11 attacks, or maybe the 7/7 attacks, when he was talking about terrorism and how terrible it was and how good he was. I wanted to readjust that for him, just so everybody realised that he was the terrorist. And but strangely enough, you can't get hold of those quotes. His one from September 11th, I thought would be a goldmine. The only version available on YouTube that I can find has kind of like a foreign language dubbed over the top, so you can't actually hear what he's saying. So I don't know whether they do that intentionally so that you can't screw with his words, but I don't know. So anyway, I was talking about the shenanigans that go on in the House of Commons, and you can watch it all on television. And essentially, I was saying that the protesters and protests in general try and change the opinions of our leaders to hope that they actually change it, because we're supposed to be a democratically, represented populace, meaning that they represent the views of the people and they don't just sort of make it up as they go along and lie to the people to try and sort of placate them and say, well, you should be shopping, it's Christmas time, why don't you shop for your children? Children really are the most important thing in the world, while they sort of take away all of our civil rights and all of our money. And just a little side note, I don't know if anyone's seen there's an advert, not that I watch too many adverts, I watch them with a discerning eye. It's really interesting for me. Now I understand a little bit more about, I suppose you'd call it propaganda, mind control, and all of that kind of stuff. All of the hallmarks are there to see. There's an advert where somebody's, it's like they're all giving each other presents at Christmas time, and below on the screen it tells you how much each present costs, RRP, just in case you want to buy it yourself. And of course the amounts of money that they're spending on each other in just this one little family is absolutely obscene. Buying little toys for little, little 7-year-old Mary for sort of 200 quid a pop, for these sort of electrical sort of computerized toys that somehow make them happier. I don't know, maybe they sort of blink the lights at a certain frequency, or play a little tune which would sends them into a very, very relaxing slumber. And that's why they're so expensive. I have no idea. But one of the things that they've bought for old grandpa, poor old grandpa over there, they spent £1,000 on an Apple notebook thing, a laptop for him. Who is buying a £1,000 laptop for their grandfather for Christmas? And of course, we all like to, for those of you that celebrate Christmas, when you buy a present, somebody opens the present, and they have a nice smile on their face, and it's really, really, really sort of a nice experience. But if somebody's bought you £1,000 worth of laptop, I just don't think sort of, just sort of going, oh, thank you so much, that's so wonderful of you. Now, who's opening the next present? It's just beyond reality. But you see, that's if you see that again and again and again, and the same trends are in different adverts where they're saying you should spend money, and then in between this, when you're thinking I don't really have money, and then they have an advert for the you can get cash really, really quick, payday loan, only 1,729% APR. It's almost like they're hinting at something. I'm getting way off the topic now, but I want to continue. The the payday loans thing, where we're encouraged to just to borrow money just to make it through to the time of the month where you are paid. Just a quick loan, you pay it off very quickly, and it is 1,729% interest, but it's only for a short period, so it's not. It's you just pay it and do with it. Well, I was watching, or should I say, was researching by watching Sky News, and if you ever really wanted to understand the way propaganda and mind control works, you should certainly watch Sky News, because that's where it's all sort of happening here in the United Kingdom anyway. Don't often watch sort of American news media. I'm sure it's exactly the same. But on Sky News they were talking about personal debt, credit cards, loans, and specifically these payday loans, things like Quick Quid and moneyinyourpocket.com and all this kind of crap that's being shoved down people's necks at the moment. Most of those things are actually corporations owned by people that own things like casinos and stuff like that in America, so you can kind of see how that works. But Sky News was telling us that your personal debt added up, every single person, their credit cards, their loans and all of that kind of stuff, their personal debt was the national debt. That's what they were saying. And I found this obscene. This made me very, very angry and upset just for a while. Then I calmed down and thought, look, it's programming. You don't have to watch it. Lots of people do watch it, but that's no reason to get angry personally yourself, because that doesn't get anyone anywhere. So anyway, they were saying it was the national debt. Now this is a scam. This is a complete scam, a bit of programming to, as I said earlier on, placate the masses, put them back to sleep, blame themselves for what's going on in the world. Everybody in the United Kingdom, everybody is striking. There's strikes here, strikes there, threatening to strikes. The government sort of threatening back, saying if you strike, you're going to lose everything you have. People are annoyed because they have to pay more pensions. They're losing their services. You just try and get a doctor's appointment. It's just crazy. Luckily, I don't use the doctors, but anyway, everybody knows that the finances are screwed. Everybody knows that the nation has a debt, but by telling people that the national debt is your personal debt, you blame yourself and you go, well, it's us, isn't it? And then when you go, you have to go Christmas shopping, and so you go down to the high street, and most people I know, don't actually want to be there, just to kind of, you have to go there, and it's horrible where they're mixing all those people fighting past them, and you're looking at them, and those people that are paying with their credit cards, it's them. Blame them. Those are the ones that are causing the hospitals to close, which is just crazy. At the risk of teaching grandmother to suck eggs, I apologise for anyone who's listening to this and knows exactly how this thing works. I just want to sort of lay it on the line here. The national debt is the amount of money that the government has borrowed off the international bankers, or the Bank of England, which is an international bank because the profits are held offshore. So it's nothing to do with the personal debt whatsoever. If you have a personal debt with one of these companies, they are essentially just investing in you. It has nothing to do. It doesn't appear on the books of the national this imaginary book that says national debt with a number on it. It doesn't appear on there. It's a company investing in you, and you're going to pay them back. Actually, if you look into it, and I encourage everybody who's listening to this to look into common law and just the way that loans, mortgages, anything like that, credit cards are a scam, because they actually get you to give them the money twice by getting you to sign a promissory note, which they keep for the full amount, and they say thank you very much. They then put an imaginary amount in your bank account, which is actually their bank account because you have to bank with them, and then you spend that and then you pay that back as well. And so if you borrow £10,000, they end up with, at the end of it, after interest, about 25, 24, 23, depending on how good the interest rate is, when really they should end up with 13 or 14,000, not 23, is because they keep the original promissory note, which was actually signed by both parties and therefore a legal form of tender, or a legal is legal tender, and therefore they deposit it into their account. But they don't tell you that, which is why they don't give you full disclosure, which is why actually the contract you sign is not worth anything at all. So if you do have a loan or a credit card or anything like that, look this stuff up, because you do not have to pay it back. And if you want to sort of research further into this, a really, really good website is yourstrawman.com. 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 You can learn all about that kind of stuff. So thank you, Sky News, for doing that. It's wonderful of you. And strangely enough, the BBC don't do that. It's because the BBC know that they will lose their sort of reputation if they start just blatantly lying to people, as they do, because they expect that the people that listen to the BBC are just a tiny little bit cleverer than the people that listen to Sky. So Sky is seriously aimed at people with an IQ less than 100. And if you do have an IQ less than 100, I'm not having a go at you here. I know you guys can get easily sort of upset. I'm just saying, try not to watch Sky News. Or if you do, just basically believe the complete opposite of what they're telling you, and that'll be closer to the truth. So I was talking about the Occupy London protest. They're hoping to, change things, and when the teachers come out because they're unhappy with the closing of their positions, people are losing their jobs, they're not going to have their pension, they don't have the job security and all that kind of stuff. They are protesting to try and stop the cuts. They don't want the cuts to happen. They think that the whole sort of thing is illegitimate. So at least when they strike, they have very, very little amount of it is effective. The government generally doesn't listen at all, but we are supposed to be in a democracy, so it's worth a go and it's worth a try. Of course, what's happening in the European Union at the moment is that the European Commission has decided that as countries, striking is never going to work, because actually our national governments won't have the power to actually change it. The European Commission will actually enforce austerity onto us. Now, the European Commission, if you didn't know, is not elected. It is selected. It's not a democratic institution or anything like that. It is, in fact, a corporation. Just like the United Kingdom is a corporation, every single country is a corporation. That's not the important issue here. The important issue is that they've never been audited in their history, which, forgive me, is something like 17 years or something like that. They've never been audited. There is serious fraud going on. They are criminals. They're financial criminals. That is pretty well documented, and you can look it up. I think the guy that really put light on that is a guy called Christopher Story. If you haven't come across Christopher Story, not Christopher's Story, although it sort of is, his name is Christopher Story, and he was a guy that used to be an advisor for government, and he'd been researching into various sort of things, fraud, corruption in our high-up institutions, and it was him basically that found out that the European Commission is, to say slightly corrupt, is a serious understatement. So, for anyone who doesn't realise, the European Commission is basically a fascist dictatorship. Now, of course, fascist dictatorship sounds like a harsh word. Nobody really likes the word fascism because of its associations with the Nazis. But fascism, if you look at one of the main symbols of the United States, and if you ever see a statue of George Washington, or if you go to, I think it's the Senate, and you see either side of it, it's got a big picture of the fasci. And the fasci is a bundle of sticks that are kind of bundled together with like a piece of material, and it's got an axe on it. Now, the whole symbolism of the fasci is nothing to do with being a dictator or anything like that. It's to do with lots of states or lots of areas coming together as one. You are stronger than if it was just one on its own. Almost impossible to break. So that's basically what fascism means, just lots of people come together. That's not always a bad thing. Of course, the United States basically is fascism. But of course they have this sort of identity and the ability to form their own opinions in each state, and as the federal government supposedly doesn't have power over all of them. But of course, those of you who live in America will probably have problems with me saying that. And dictatorship, that's the bad word here. It means that it's not democracy, and that basically they just make up things. They have rules and they enforce them upon the individual countries, and the countries have no way to say no. I mean, they could take any individual country, call it Greece, call it Ireland, call it any way you like, and they could basically just starve them. And if they started to rise up and have a revolution and try and reclaim some of that sovereignty, what's going to happen? Well, I'm sure it's not long before we're going to have a proper European army as well, who will go in and just sort of sort them out, or at least a militarised police service. So it's pretty bad, I think, is what's going on in Europe at the moment. So keep an eye on that. So I have been Samuel William, your host, and this has been Truth You Can Wake Up To.